And good evening and welcome to episode 11 of the ProSynth Network live show this Sunday, June 14th, 2020. It's 8 p.m. here in the UK, whatever time it is where you are. I'm sure you all have watches and clocks, so you don't need me to tell you. But welcome along to another Sunday night's shenanigans with myself and these guys, Ben Simpson, Cryss, and of course our guest tonight is Bob Familiar. Hello everyone, how are you all?
Good evening.
Hello.
Hello.
And welcome to Bob. Great to see you. Thanks ever so much for coming on today.
My pleasure. I appreciate the invitation.
Good, excellent. We've got loads of things, loads of questions lined up for you, so steel yourself. But let's first do, before we get onto the news topics of the day and then get to chat to Bob in more depth, let's go around the room, as they say, and we'll start off with Ben Simpson in the north of England there. Ben, how are you and what have you been up to this week?
I've had a fairly relaxed week, really. I did change the SSD in my iMac.
Oh, you did that job, yeah?
Yeah.
How did it go?
It went well. Apart from we put it all back together and realised we hadn't connected up the LCD to the motherboard, so there was no picture at first. So we had to do it all again and remembered to connect the things up. And it's working like a dream. I would recommend it to anyone, really. It's pretty good. Samsung Evo 860 2TB SSD.
Did you have any issues with the temperature sensor? Because I'm told that that's one of the things that it doesn't like.
I didn't have issues with it because I read that and I bought a little kit off OWC.
Oh, excellent.
That just like bridges in and negates that.
So does it disable the sensor or?
You still got to stick something to the drive, which I think I'm no expert but I thought they didn't give off much heat, so I don't really see the point of sticking a sensor to the drive.
True.
Yeah, but I did because that's what it said to do.
Excellent. Well, I think there's going to be some reciprocal stuff coming up because I might want to do that myself, seeing as I was going to get it done professionally, but haven't been able to because of lockdown. So I might decide to do that myself, and in exchange, I'll send you all my documentation for fitting SCSI to SD drives.
I love it.
a bit of exchange there. Anyway, thanks for that, Ben. Let's move over to the west coast of the USA, and we'll talk to Cryss. How are you, sir? What have you been up to? Because you've not been here for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, no, I've been doing all right. It was fun to be on Jamie's show last week, and tell you about one little thing that had going on this week is that, I usually get out to exercise and listen to some podcasts, but this week I decided to listen to some albums. Mm-hmm. And so Guilty Pleasure, 80s hard rock, and listening to Hysteria by Def Leppard. I usually listen to Ozzy Van Halen kind of stuff, but and that album sounds so amazing. Muttling's production on it, that was just walking was wonderful because man, just the sound of that album is so good. I just had to tell you guys about it.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Yes. It's one of the best produced albums of that era and of that genre, I guess. I remember that was my first actual CD in 1987, I think it was. And it was completely bought by accident because I was going out with a girl whose stepfather was a tech sergeant on one of the US air bases around here. And he used to buy all the latest CDs for like nothing on base. And her mum and dad were out working one day and we were around, just fooling around as teenagers do. And we were listening to Hysteria because we both loved it. And I took it out of the CD player, and I always do this thing where I stick my finger in the middle hole and then just pull it out like this so you don't touch the thing. And it slipped and it fell onto a statue that they'd got by the side of their hi-fi, the old silver stacking hi-fi units, and it got a mark on it. And so I went sort of cap in hand to my girlfriend's stepfather and said, "I'm really sorry, I scratched your Def Leppard CD." And he said, "That's okay, I'll buy another one, and you can have this one." So he went off and bought this other one. And it turns out all it was just a little bit of paint that had come off. And I just rubbed it off. And there was my first CD, Hysteria, which is just a superb album.
Yeah. Fairlight on that, isn't there?
All the drums are a Fairlight. Oh, do you know, every week Sorry, it's been answered. Yeah, I'm going to turn that off now. Yeah, all the drums, because obviously, his name's gone completely out of my head. The drummer, Rick Allen. Rick had that accident, beforehand, and was learning to play using was it D drum gear and sensors on an actual kit, and then he had these special pedals made and everything, but it just wasn't, he wasn't right, in the zone at the time. So he played what he could, but Mutt Lange apparently just overdubbed the whole lot with Series 3 Fairlight drums, which is why their sound so big. I mean, it's just the sonic range of it is amazing.
Yeah, not just the sound of it, because the production is so good, but also the arrangement of the songs. Yeah. When it seems much more simple than it is, but when you hear these little parts coming in and out, things happening just kind of in the background that are keeping it really alive and moving, just incredible.
Because when you sit that side by side with Pyromania, which I think was the one beforehand, musically the band, yes, they've matured a little bit more, but the sound is the Def Leppard sound. And Mutt never got rid of that Def Leppard sound. He just made it better. And when you play them next to each other, you know they're Def Leppard. They've got all the sonic signatures, but his stereo is just like, love it, absolutely love it.
That's great production, I suppose, isn't it?
That's what it all means. Anyway, that's enough from us. Let's get a proper musician into the call, into the show, shall we? And let's introduce our guest this week, Mr. Bob Familiar. How are you, sir?
Very good, thank you. I've never been referred to as a proper musician, so I appreciate that.
Well, compared to the rest of us. So where do we find you on this Sunday?
I'm doing great. I live in the Boston area, so that's where I'm located, and I've been, I'm between projects right now. So, I appreciate Cryss has been a great supporter, so I appreciate that, and he's been encouraging me to get my music out there in different ways. So I appreciate that, and I just finished up an album, cool. Better Living Through Chemistry. So now I'm in between. So that in between time is okay. First, you start gassing on instruments that are out there. Okay, what's the next thing I should get? So I've been doing a bit of that, and it was very interesting because the night before, I think we're going to talk about this later, but the night before that Iridium announcement came out, I was checking out the Hydra Synth, and I'm going, wow, this looks awesome. I don't have anything like this. And then the next day, I was like, okay, well now I gotta rethink all of that. So that happened, but. In this last project, I did a lot with these libraries from Spitfire Audio, which are just fantastic. What a fantastic collection of sample libraries, and I've been playing with some of those. So I picked up another one this past week and been playing with it. Oliver Arnolds is a composer from Iceland, and he does just amazing work, and he has a library called Stratus, which is samples of his felt piano, and I think a couple of synths that he has. But the library itself is a little bit different because what you get is a grid layout, so it's up to 8 voices, and he's recorded all these different rhythms, and you can layer them. And it's if you're into system music or like Steve Reich or Philip Glass or anything like that, it's very inspirational in that direction, but his samples are just they're so gentle and beautiful, and he even records like the sound of the wood, of the hammer as it's moving, things like that just create this beautiful organic. So I've been playing with that and just trying to get inspired for the next project.
Excellent. So how would you describe yourself then? Are you a musician is that your main thing, or tell us a little about your background and how you got to where you are.
Well, I've been doing music my whole life, and after high school, I went to Berklee College of Music here in Boston, and did a stint there, and then left and played in bands that was in the late 70s, and then early 80s I was playing in bands. But professionally, I'm in software, so I've been in the software industry about 34 years now. Last 24 or so with Microsoft, and so that's that's what I do every day. I'm the director of the Microsoft Technology Center, which is based in Boston. There's about 50 of those centers around the world, so I'm lucky enough to be a director of one of those. And I manage a team of very high-level architects who work with customers on getting their software in the clouds. That's what I do during the day.
Cool.
So my music is what I fill all the other hours of my day. Obviously, there's my family. I do pay attention to my family, and then there is the music, and so, you know, what I've been doing my whole life, because it isn't my profession, is just continue learning and trying to get better. And, you know, over the last several years, got more heavily into hardware synthesizers and figuring all of that out. Got my degree in, you know, my master's degree from YouTube over the last 4 years, and just been learning a ton and you know, getting the music out there, just trying to get it out there, because it isn't my profession, but I absolutely love it. It's my passion, and I love being part of the community.
Excellent.
So that's really that's what I'm doing.
Fantastic. Oh, there you go. There's a biography in a nutshell. Sorry, Ben. Sorry, I was.
Sorry, Bob. I was just going to jump in there and ask: have you never considered bringing some of your interests together with work and maybe getting some of your team work on some astounding musical software?
Yeah, I need them developing some new Eurorack module firmware. I don't know if that would go over with upper management, but I can see that.
We'll put in a word.
Yeah. I think there's definitely a lot of crossover. I think what I'm sure you all agree is what we love about this space is that crossover between engineering and art, right? It's where all that comes together that is really exciting. So doing things like, let's say, taking the Mutable Instruments firmware and creating your own flavor of that, using that as the start and creating firmware for another version of Clouds, let's say, or another version of one of their other. I mean, that's on my list of things to do, right? So there's absolutely that, and someday I will find enough copious spare time to be able to get into that part of it for sure.
I was just googling because and I should have thought of this before. I should have read your biography in more detail. Does anybody remember that really, really awful Microsoft music thing from way back? It's like a MIDI thing, and it was almost like an AI thing, wasn't it? But it wasn't AI. It was kind of. I'll try and find it, but it was hilarious.
It was. Let's create some really bad pop music.
Yeah.
That was basically what it did. Yeah.
So funny, so good. But you know, Microsoft they've had their finger in music technology software, and they've some years I remember them partnering up with Propellerhead, obviously now Reason Studio. There was some stuff I remember seeing at one of their developer conferences, and obviously Microsoft have had their hand in MIDI and music technology for many years. So we really we owe them a debt of gratitude in some respect, I'm sure.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean the company at its heart, we consider ourselves a platform company. Yeah. So what that means is we create a lot of libraries and operating systems, and then today it's cloud services. But what really we are is a platform for other companies to build their software. So when you look at companies like, in the past, I used for many years Cakewalk, right? And the reason I used Cakewalk is because that was like, the premier DAW on Windows. And just recently I moved over to PreSonus Studio One, also another fantastic DAW that runs on Windows. So while, most musicians, I would say, probably are in the Apple ecosystem, fantastic environment, tons of apps and great software there. Just my life, I'm a PC. I'm if you remember that commercial, I was that guy. I was the guy who says I'm the PC, right? That's me in a nutshell. So everything I do is on a PC, and so I'm just grateful that there are companies out there who are leveraging the Windows operating system to create great applications for music.
Yeah. I've just found the video. I'll play it later. We'll save that one for later. because that is funny. Microsoft Research presents Songsmith. Thank you to
Songsmith,
who reminded me of the name. But we'll have that as a light introduction a little bit later on. Right, okay, so let's
get a couple of points, though, for having Brian Eno and Robert Fripp do some of the startup sounds, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right, okay, so let's move. We'll go through a few news topics, then we'll come back to Bob, and I know that Cryss and Ben have got a whole bunch of questions that they want to ask, so we'll bring those in a little while. But let's go to the first news item of the day, and this is something I picked up for a couple of reasons. A, because I'm a massive, massive Prince fan, and B, because Scott, who is or used to be one of the engineers at Paisley Park, managed to acquire some stuff, and he's now selling it on through RR Auction in the US. And the first item that came up was Prince's iconic DX7 synthesizer, used on the Purple Rain album and also the Purple Rain tour, and it features a whole bunch of markups on masking tape above the various preset button selectors. Let's see if we can bring some of these images up. There we go. So I'm not entirely sure if that's Prince's own writing, but we've got song titles there. There's Kiss, and I think there was a couple of others that were fairly recognisable. I think the clue to the owner is in this picture, because it's got Fink Main, so that must be Matt Fink. So this was probably part of his live rig. But last updated in August of '86 to Rev 1.8, and apparently still fully functional, and is currently selling for the current bid is $3,025 US. They estimate it to go to 25,000. I think they're being a little bit ambitious, I think is the polite way of putting it. But there's a fantastic piece of music history on a number of levels. It's a DX7. It was owned by Prince. It was used in on the Purple Rain tour. Lots of history there, accompanied by a letter of authenticity from Shane Keller. And the other item that certainly of interest, there are a number of things like clothing and song sheets and lyrics and stuff. The other item is the EMAX II rack mount sampler, including a bunch of floppy disks. Now apparently these have been created post this being removed from the studio, where they've taken elements from master tracks and put them on there. So I don't think these are Prince's own sample discs, but you can see there, Baby Star must refer to Baby I'm a Star, and that's currently got an estimate of 5,000 US, sitting at 1,210 at the moment. So that auction goes on through till the evening of June 18th, I think. So there you go. There's lots of other bits on there, but you can go to RR Auction. So guys, your thoughts? Any thoughts on classic vintage equipment owned by the rich and famous?
Well, I'm just about to sell David Bowie's Hydrosynth here.
I think I'll buy that.
Have any of you guys bought any equipment that was verifiably owned or used by people?
I've got
You've got David Bowie's Hydrosynth, yeah.
I've actually got, and I didn't do this on purpose, but I've got Paul Hardcastle's E64 Ultra thing.
Oh, the 6400.
Yeah, the Ultra one.
The EMU, yeah. Oh, that's
yeah.
Cool.
I bought that, and I was just bidding on it, and then I won the thing, and then I got a message from Paul Hardcastle saying like, yeah, great, you've won, that kind of thing. So I said, you're not the Paul Hardcastle, are you? And he went, no. He He said, "That's me dad."
Oh wow!
Yeah, and he said, like, "Dad's give me this, and I've not got any use for it." But apparently, he used it on one of his albums, like this, like jazz kind of sampling album.
All right.
I've never heard it, but it is definitely of it.
It's genuine,
one time.
Yeah. Cryss, have you ever bought, or do you own, or have ever owned anything that's been owned by someone famous or talented?
I was trying to think. I've had so much gear. I don't, off the top of my head, I don't recall anything being used by anybody famous. I think one of the things that one of your comments I thought was interesting, because you'd said that the was it the DX7 that would be going, they estimated for 25,000.
Yeah.
Is that correct? And then you said, well, that's probably shooting over a little bit, but it is. And I don't know how it is for the keyboard world. I've more seen this with the guitar world, where you have famous guitars being sold. And I got to thinking about, because Prince is both, I mean, he's multi-instrumentalist.
Yeah.
But, you know, a DX7 being sold for 25 grand, one of his guitars, I mean, I would imagine would probably do 10 times that amount, which is kind of an interesting thing.
But
you know, either his.
I mean, yes, he's multi-instrumental, but he's also the guitar was.
Yeah,
that was the
the
top
visual image of him.
Although he would say often that his main instrument was always the piano. That was his. That's how he learned to play and how he learnt music. So, yeah, it's interesting. I just think 25k is just way, too much. I mean, we, myself and my partner in Sydney, we've sold and owned a few famous Fairlights, and I can tell you now that we sold Ian Stanley's Fairlight. It's Ian Stanley X of Tears for Fears and a number of other things. So maybe not a well-known name, but that sold for I think US dollars just shy of 10,000. But the Boris Blank Fairlight from Yellow, which has probably distinctly more cachet than Ian Stanley's, that sold for an extra 4,000, and that's technically hardware wise it was no different to the other one. So the name does add, and I've seen and heard of various Fairlights going, Jar's Fairlight. There were a few others. They don't go for 25k. Not now, so I'm struggling to see where they get that figure from. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. It's way out of my league. Even it's currently sitting at 3,025. That's me out. So
yeah,
shan't be doing that.
Yeah.
But there you go. Bob, have you got any notable pieces of equipment in your collection that used to have a famous home?
No, I'm not a collector.
Okay.
I have to say I usually don't buy things even on the used market for whatever reason. I like things to come in the box, and I keep the box, and I might sell it, but I don't know. It's just pet peeve of mine. I like the smell, that new smell.
Box fresh. Box fresh. Yes. Oh dear. Yeah, well, I can confess to owning a few pieces of gear that, aside from the Fairlight stuff, because I don't really technically own any of that. It passes through and then goes on. But I do have, and I think I've mentioned this on the show before. I'm not going to. Well, yeah. Let's see if I can reach it here. Oh. And this is where he breaks his unique piece of equipment. So this.
Oh yeah.
So this VS880EX, which is a bit dusty. This came out of Psalm Studios, Trevor Horn's Psalm Studios, verifiable by the asset tag that still sits on there with the Horn name. Yeah. And with that, I also bought just under there somewhere the Guitar Rig pedal board for Guitar Rig 1 that came out of Psalm Studios, and that was just because I went to an auction. Because unfortunately the classic Psalm Studios on Basing Street in London is no more. They sold the property and redeveloped it as accommodation, expensive accommodation, and then they moved down the road to Ladbroke Grove. So they auctioned off a whole bunch of gear, and unfortunately the piece that I wanted, which had been customised by the Frankie Goes to Hollywood team, with all sorts of stuff scribbled on it. And being a big Frankie fan, that was my thing. But unfortunately, I got beaten to that one, so couldn't get it. But yeah, that's about all I've got really.
I could beat you.
Go on then.
Beat you on that one.
Go on then. Whoop, wrong camera.
I thought I might have told you this one before, but I used to own a recording studio years ago.
Oh yes.
And it'll give you an idea how long ago it was when I tell you who was in. Ray Dorsey. Do you know Ray Dorsey? Have you ever heard of Mungo Jerry?
Oh yeah, of course.
In the summertime.
Yeah.
You must. It must have been out in America, that song.
It was number one on the day I was born in 1970.
Right. Oh, well, there you go. See, this is it. It's 6 degrees of separation, this, because he came into my studio, right? And, I've gone out of focus.
Yeah, stop moving.
He came into my studio, and he was telling me about other things he's done, because, you know, I only knew him for that in the summertime, and he'd done loads of stuff. Hang on. Use the force on it. And he said that Kelly Marie song, that Feels Like I'm in Love.
Oh yeah.
You might not know that in America. I apologize, but it's a big hit. But he actually wrote it for Elvis.
Wow.
Right. He said, I wrote that song for Elvis, and Elvis had agreed to do it, but then he died. So I had to give it.
Unfortunate.
But if you imagine that, my head is in a spin, my feet don't touch the ground.
Do you know it hasn't?
You can hear it, can't you?
You can.
You can hear it. And so it completely changed the feel of it and went down the disco route.
Yeah.
Anyway, I said, I love the disco. I love the synth drum in that song. I said, yeah, I've got to be honest. I don't really like much about the song, but that synth drum thing's really good. This is all while we're supposed to be working on a remix of In the Summertime. We're having this conversation, and he said, "I've still got that."
No way.
He said, "I've still got that." He said, "It's a clip-on thing." He said, "You just clip it onto a drum, and you can hit the drum, and it sends vibrations through the clap, and that triggers the thing." But he said, "You can actually just hit the box itself, and that triggers it."
Wow.
Said, but it's not worked for a while. He said, I'll bring it in, and if we can see if we can get it running. Anyway, he brought it in, and he left it with me.
Wow.
So I've got that.
You've got the do.
I've got the boo machine off that song. I've actually got it. The one that was used. That's completely bizarre, because I would never have bought that, but I've ended up with it.
Yeah. If I was to say for those people that aren't aware of the song. I can't obviously play it on the show because we'll get a strike for it, but it's Kelly Marie, Feels Like I'm in Love. She was a strapping, red-headed Scottish lass, and she had two slender, tall dudes in silver suits dancing with her at the time. But it was a classic disco hit, wasn't it, back in the day?
Yeah.
Go and Google that one.
So Brian Get So Many Music says, my Voyager Anniversary Edition is certified as one of only 5 made in natural walnut instead of being painted black, and was allegedly owned by Limp Bizkit.
Wow. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Whatever happened to Limp Bizkit? Are they still going?
I have no idea.
I just remember one of their songs, and them doing this stupid video for it, and that was about it. Not really my cup of tea, but no, I mean that's good. I mean, it might hold its value. Then again, it might not. Who knows? Somebody asked in the chat whether when we sell Fairlights, we sell the artists' libraries with them as well. No, unfortunately, we don't. But what does happen is that I often get access to some of these libraries privately, which is nice. But no, we don't sell. We just sell factory sounds, and then you do with it what you will. Anything else in there that we've missed? Who's keeping an eye on that today?
I'll try.
Go on then. Yeah, do that. Asio Head said he's been in loads of famous studios when buying and selling gear. It's funny because the EMAX behind me, I bought from a studio in Brighton. I had no idea who the guy was. And then a couple of months later, Rowetta from the Happy Mondays posted a picture of her in this studio with this guy. And I thought, oh, I know him. I've bought stuff from him. Still don't know who he is, but he's got a cracking little studio and subterranean studio in Brighton. It's very good. So there you go. That's Prince's DX7 and Prince's EMAX II, currently up for grabs on RR Auction, all one word, rrauction.com. And I think there's a whole bunch of other stuff in there, including other bits of memorabilia. But as far as musical hardware concerned, those are the two pieces there. So I'll keep an eye on those and see where we go. Let's move on to the next. Oh, sorry. Did somebody want to say something?
Yeah. Our dude says need to sample some of Robbie's birds and down pitch them until they become dinosaur noises.
It's funny. They've said, haven't they, since everybody's been in lockdown, that the birds are singing. There's difference in the volume because they're not having to compete with lots of traffic, and so we're noticing them more because there's not so much ambient sound, and they're not having to put so much effort in because they haven't got to be heard above all the stuff that isn't there. But
noise pollution.
No, I mean you can hear they're going for it out there, and we have all sorts. We have owls, we have cuckoos, we have woodpeckers, and of course all the domestic stuff going on. Pigeons.
Well, do you know these conspiracy theories about coronavirus?
Yeah.
I heard one of them was so they could change the batteries in all the birds.
There is this fake conspiracy going on, isn't there, about birds being cameras, they're government cameras, which I think it was a deliberate fake conspiracy theory, and it was very, very funny. Google that one. Right, let's move on to the next topic before we get on to our special guest. And this one concerns our friends across the channel in France, UVI. They have just released UVI Drone FX, which retails for €149 currently, with 33.5% off as an introductory price through June 16th. So you've only got a couple of days to get that one. So this is a drone effects unit that allows you to create drones, I guess. I think that's about the sum of it, although I'm probably doing it a slight disservice there. So you have two sources, and you can kind of XY between them using the pad on the screen there. They have uses the Urcam granular modulation and high quality effects, and I can vouch for that Urcam granular engine from Falcon, which is very good. It has native MP integration and surround sound sources, which is nice. Shall we have let's see if we can have a listen to this. Turn the volume on. So, as you can see, it's kind of like, it's droney. It's just lots of kind of ambient sounds, 500 sources, 300 plus presets even. Loads of stuff going on there. I suppose this is a fairly specialist piece of software. Personally, if I want a droney type sound, I'll pick a patch on a synth that does a droney type thing, and just hold down a couple of octaves and boom, that's it. And then I'm actually picking up hopefully an SY22 which has the joystick on it. It's kind of the precursor to the Wave Station.
I used to have an SY22 and I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
I don't know where it went. When you can't remember getting rid of a synth.
It was Dodgy Bob that sold it to me. No.
I don't remember ever getting rid of it, but I loved it. It was great. That like vector joystick thing was,
and just brilliant. Allows you to put in that motion into a patch.
I ended up with the 77, and is it the 99?
Yeah.
and I never clicked with them the same way as I did with the 22.
No, the 22 and the 35, and then the TG33, which was the desktop module. They were the only ones with the vector stuff, and then they kind of dropped it for the 77 and the 85 and the 99 in favour of more of a workstation ethic, I guess. But Bob, are you a fan of drones? Is this something you would use in your workflow?
Well, I did check it out, and it looks like it's very well done. I actually have one product from UVI, which is their Ravenscroft 275 piano, which is a very nice piano. But I think I had the reaction you had. I'm listening to it. Definitely, it's oriented towards a sound designer, right? You want to go in there and you want to design, but all the things that you can do are very likely the things that I'm going to try to do with this equipment I have here in my room. I'd probably prefer to do it with my hardware.
Yeah.
But again, it looks like it's very well made. It's got fantastic sound. So if you're looking for something like that in the box, I think it's a great product.
And I think that's exactly it. It's something that in the box you can just break out and get something really, really quickly, and then work with it. Whereas as you've just said, you might actually want to create your drone from scratch. I guess this is just like an out-of-the-box kind of thing. Because I know they also, and we've spoken about this before with some joviality on the show, so they have a bunch of other effects. So let's see what we've got here. We've got drone, obviously. We've got the whoosh effects module, which, strangely enough, generates whoosh sounds. There's the Meteor, which is a powerful cinematic sound design tool for creating epic swells, powerful impacts, and dramatic backdrops. And I remember in the trailer, it just sounded like every other Hollywood trailer. That's what they were using, that kind of big, impact, yeah. And the pitch down, drone, which goes. And really,
that's on everything.
It's on everything. But there you go. For €149, you can have
angry every time she hears that sound.
Yeah,
it's on everything. But
I'm gonna do a dance track and use that as the bass drum.
Yeah,
right, all the way through.
They also do the scratch machine, which is an interesting thing, and the sweep machine, and they're quite cheap at €39. And we've spoken about Walker before, which was their Foley plug-in with all these different types of shoes, different types of surfaces that you could create Foley, footstep Foley sounds. But the one that they've got here called Extreme Effects is actually quite an old library, but it actually has way more usable stuff in there than all of these, I think, on their own. Because I have Extreme Effects, and they've got some really great drone type, cinematic type things. Plus they've got effect sounds, so you can have lasers or gunshots or street sounds or that kind of thing. It's a really, really useful package, and that's only €99. So I know these are kind of specialists, and I guess if you are in sound design, particularly in the film and movie or game environment, this might be something that's very useful. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, so I'm kind of with Bob on this. Like, it's much more interesting to do it, bust out the Moog 1 or the Eurorack and just go crazy sound designing something that will be organic and moving. What would have really sold me on the drone pack, though, like this UVI drone, is if the sample library was taken from government spy birds, sampled down to make dinosaur drones, and then put into that package. I'd be all in.
Right. So tomorrow morning, I am creating a plugin, sampling my birds and pitching them down, and I'm going to sell it for €149. I've been looking for a project to use my new Tascam digital recorder.
Oh yeah.
So I'm just going to go stand out in the garden like this.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to bother standing. I'm going to because it's got a tripod socket. I'm going to put it on the tripod in the middle of my garden. I'm going to leave it there all day, and then come back and edit. And that's what I'm going to make.
And I want to make the mockumentary of you doing that. Film it and.
Excellent. Oh dear. So there you go. That's UVI's new. We've kind of gone off piste there, but I've just gone to lock my screen up inadvertently there. So yeah, UVI's drone, which is out now for €99. Full price is 149, but you can get it at that reduced rate until Tuesday. I don't know what time on Tuesday, but Tuesday is what they say. Hats off to UVI. They do some really good stuff, and this niche stuff, clearly there's a market for it, because I hear lots of good things about these small packages, but it's certainly not something that's up my street. Anyway, Cryss, I'm going to hand over to you now, because I think you have some questions for our guests. So would you like to pick up from here?
Yeah, let's go on. And just again, we're so happy to have you on, Bob. You're somebody that I've known for, 2.5 years now, I think. But this is the first time that we've gotten to talk person to person, not online. Yeah. No, and I was very appreciative, because Bob was one of the first people to start watching my YouTube channel when I started it at the end of 2018, but it was because of our common interest in the Moog 1. And so it was a little while later that I don't remember how I came across it even, but I found, maybe it was from Facebook or something, somebody else had posted your music. I'm like, dang, that's Bob? This is some incredible stuff. So, just kind of going a little more into your background, but with music. I mean, how did you get into music? When and where did that all start?
Well, I as far as I can remember, I've been into music, and I was that classic story, just pestering my parents that I wanted to start taking lessons. They weren't not necessarily oriented musically, and so I think it was around 6th grade in the U.S. I said, the band leader came to the school and said, here's some instruments, and I'm offering lessons. So I fell in love with the saxophone. So I went home and I said, Mom and Dad, I want to take saxophone lessons. They were like, we don't want all that screeching in the house. And so that didn't happen. And then, but then I got heavily into drums, and I was banging on just about everything in the house, which was causing a lot of marks and little bits of damage all everywhere. So I said, no, I want to take drum lessons. And they were like, okay, if you stop, beating on all the furniture, then yes, you could take drum lessons. So saxophone, they didn't want the screeching, but drums they were okay with. So that's when I realized my parents had been replaced with aliens from so anyway, I got into drums, and I played drums throughout high school, but also started to just myself experiment with the piano and try to teach myself chord progressions. And I've always been into music, so obviously I grew up on the Beatles, and heavily influenced by British rock. If it was, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and Genesis and Pink Floyd, and Peter Gabriel, and all of these fantastic artists. King Crimson, I was a huge fan of King Crimson. Oh, yeah. So I started to learn piano, and I was playing drums, and then I decided to go to Berklee College of Music. I studied there for 2 years, and I went in as a drummer and realized, man, there are a lot of good drummers out there. That's sort of like a little fish goes in the big pond, and you realize, like, oh my God, there's some seriously talented people on this planet. But I learned a tremendous amount, and kind of when I left, I was decided that composition was more, and arranging was more what I was interested in. And I think if you listen to my music, that's kind of what's still consistent. I really enjoy the composition and the arranging, and that's why electronic instruments are just a fantastic palette, right? Because now I can create all the different sounds and arrange them just the way I want. That was kind of the genesis of that. And I played in bands in the 80s in the Boston area. And then when my children were born in the 90s, I kind of took a break and just started to do home studio. The big shift for me happened in about 2010. I actually decided to take a break because I wasn't happy with my music, and I wasn't, I was a bit frustrated with the equipment that I had at that time. And so I got into astrophotography, and I did that for about 6 years. So telescopes, cameras, and just started to take pictures of deep space objects and got heavily into that for a while. But then I felt the muse again for music. And about 4 years ago, I sold all that equipment and started to buy up hardware synthesizers. And that's where I am today, just enjoying sort of working in hardware, because that's what I discovered. And that was what was missing before, is I really do enjoy working the hardware instrument and sound designing, turning the knobs, playing the keyboard. That's where my joy is. And then, of course, recording it.
Before you got into hardware then, and maybe before you took your break, what were you using in terms of software then? Because I mean, I'm used to seeing you with the hardware, but what was your instruments or plugins of choice that you were doing in software?
So at that time, I was using, obviously Cakewalk has changed the name of their product over the years, but whatever, Cakewalk was offering at that time, I think I used their software from the very beginning that I discovered it in the early 90s. And so I've been on that stack for a long time. They had a lot of plugins, so some VST synths, and mainly my outboard gear was a Rompler. And that was it. It was a Yamaha, I want to say is it SPX90 or I forget the name of it, but it was a nice 88 key keyboard. And that was it. I wasn't doing a ton of synthesis at the time. I was just using the built-in sounds, but I wasn't really happy with the way the recording was going, really pretty much one track at a time, kind of an approach. And what I realized after taking the break and coming back and realizing there was this explosion in analog synthesis and in hardware synthesizers was that I could work outside the computer, and I could actually sequence outside, and I could get multiple instruments going. And all of a sudden I was realizing what I heard in my head and I couldn't realize in the box. I was able to get it to happen outside by using a hardware synthesizer, which for me is the Squark Pyramid, and hooking all the gear up to get all the different layers and rhythms happening.
So what were some of the first forays into hardware synthesizers for you that really got you to catch the bug?
Well, I have sold an awful lot of equipment over the last 4 years, bought and sold, to kind of what I have today. So I think one of the first instruments I picked up was the Roland JD-XA, and wasn't really happy with it, but I had that for a bit. Picked up, I think at one time I had 3 Mother 32s, in the Moog rack, and I was trying to figure out kind of the semi-module thing, and I ended up selling all of that. I had a Prophet Rev 2 for a while, fantastic synth, but once the Moog 1, was announced, and it was like, that's the mothership right there. That's the one I have to have, and it replaced a lot of other things. And at the same time, I was going down the Eurorack rabbit hole, and I bought and sold a lot of modules throughout that same time. And I've arrived at a configuration that I have now, and which I'm very happy with. So I'm actually not so much in the Eurorack buying and selling mode anymore. I'm just using what I have, which is a make noise shared system, and then another suitcase of modules that are piecemeal from different manufacturers.
You've done some really great work with the make noise shared system, and for everyone in the chat room, please just go search YouTube for it, Make Noise and Bob Familiar, and you'll find some really great stuff. Also, before I forget, we'll do this again at the end, but Bob has just started a YouTube channel and started posting videos. There's some really great music. The one that I was listening to this week, in addition to the album, which we'll ask you about too, was the one that you had done with the, was it the Chaos Odessa? Is that what it's called? Odessa?
Yeah. Odessa, correct. Yeah. A fantastic module, additive synthesis module. There's a little add-on called the HEL, H-E-L, And if you add that with the Odesso, it becomes a 5-voice additive synthesis module. And just absolutely gorgeous tones. And so you can do, I've been experimenting with it since it's 5-voice, but send in 5 distinct sequences into it to you get different harmonics and different bell tones coming out of it. And then, of course, modulating every aspect of it. That's the great thing about Eurorack, is being able to just modulate every aspect of the module itself. So getting a lot of unsequenced LFOs that are just changing all of the different configurations and parameters. So yeah, that's an awesome. So I love their modules. So XAOC is the way it's spelled, but it's pronounced chaos. Yeah. Fantastic Eurorack company. And of course, I have a fair amount of mutable instruments as well. I enjoy their modules.
Yeah, they're the ones that kind of got me into it as well. Just checking out. I mean, it's very cliched, but Rings in the Clouds kind of sounds that people were doing. Like, I want to check this out. This is very interesting. Ben, I still have some more questions, but jump in, and I know you got some.
I was just going to say, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here with us, Bob. I'm a fan of your work, and that's what I was going to talk about. Really, is your approach to composing. It's for me, and I only mean complimentary here. If something comes out the wrong way, I definitely don't mean it that way, because your music sounds fantastic. But it's kind of like the very first piece of music I heard of yours, I think it was a bit like a circusy thing came in. I thought, hey, what's going on here? It's a bit bonkers. And then it didn't go where I thought it was going to go at all. It went into something completely different, and this circus thing that I found quite disturbing at first, formed a rhythm with something else, and it was like, whoa, this guy's bang on here. He's doing mad stuff, and I really like it, and that's what I really like about your stuff is it's very, very different. It's very creative and clever, and I think it's absolutely brilliant.
Well, I love compliments, just so you know. I mean, it's just as I said, my first instrument was drums, so a lot of doing is based in rhythms. I'm, I've studied a lot of jazz harmony, and then as of late, also looking at more, orchestral voicings and things like that. Very interested in harmony, and then of course the melodic aspects of it. That hopefully everyone focuses for themselves and kind of what trying to bring something unique melodically, because that hopefully is what people can hook into. But for me, it's a lot of modal work. So just picking a mode and saying, okay, I'm going to get some arpeggios going in this mode. And again, one of the reasons I love the Moog 1 with the 3 synths as part of one patch, and doing something like where the first synth is an arpeggio of a mode, and then allowing it to kind of spread out in the stereo field so that you don't know, there's no sense of where one is, right? So I might actually use random as the way to select the notes, and then come in with the second synth with a different sound, doing another arpeggio that's rhythmically related to that from time perspective, but maybe not the same number of notes. And so now it's creating, this jump patterns, and then a third, being able to go, well, now one more. I want to go to this one, right? So let me get to that third synth sound, different sound, maybe running at twice the speed. And again, another modal perspective, different rhythm. And then once that's going, saying, okay, now I'm going to use another pad and put a chord progression over that, so that now there's some kind of a form to it. So that's sort of one technique, I like to use, is just starting with rhythms and modes that I then figure out what would be an interesting chord progression to float through that, and what would be an interesting melody, something that hopefully is evocative.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It really works. I was just wondering as well, like where the inspiration comes from. Is it like a discovery thing, or do you set out with a kind of generalization of what you'd like the finished piece to be like? Do you I want to create something like this, or does it evolve as you do it?
That's a great question. I'd say sometimes I'll just sit down and I'll write something that's just a chord progression on a piano, right? I'll just say, okay, I'm going to try to use these chords. I like this, and then figure out a way to arrange that, here in the studio. But a lot of my pieces start out as experiments, just an experimental patch on the modular, on the make noise, and I get something going there, and I'm going, okay, now let me put a drum beat to that. What time signature do I want for the drum beat? Because it'll be whatever. There's no time signature on the make noise. There's a rhythm going, but it's polymetric. So let me decide: do I want to do a 4/4, 5/4, 7/4 drum beat? Yeah. And then once that's going, it's okay. Again, going back to what would be a cool bass line to put on that. What would be an interesting chord progression to layer on top? So many times it starts with an experimental synth patch that then it just inspires me to start to put more standard, if that's a right term, more common types of parts on top of that, with the end result being hopefully the experience you had.
Yeah.
Going, what's this circus music, right? What's going on here? And then all of a sudden another part comes in, but it locks, right? Something comes in and it locks in it, and hopefully it makes it interesting. Which I love. I'm going to use that from now on. I'm going to change my profile. I make circus music. So.
I've got a question for you, Bob, because I'm just pulling up some info to share with the people watching. So your album that's just been launched on your Bandcamp page, which is bobfamiliar.bandcamp.com, is called Better Living Through Chemistry. Now I thought, I know that name. And where was your inspiration for that album title?
So again, when you do instrumentals, always have to search for something where I'm going to draw all the names from, right? So early on, I was using the names of elements, and I got tired of doing that. So I'm always looking for something that either a book I'm reading or something that's happening in the world, and try to draw titles for my pieces from that. So this time I decided on, well, we're in this lockdown period. A lot of, as I'm sure you know, a lot of information is coming at us, which we're not always sure if it's true or not. So I got this sense of, well, at the end of the day, I just feel like I'm constantly being marketed to. Mm-hmm. Marketed news is just now marketing to me. It's not, I don't know. They're just trying to sell me something. So I went and I just started to investigate well-known marketing slogans. So that's where all the names of the titles of the pieces come from. Stronger Than Dirt, No More Tears, Baby Shampoo. Stronger Than Dirt. It's like a clothes
detergent thing.
Detergent, exactly. Yeah. Better Living Through Chemistry. Early on, it's not exactly that, but it basically, I think it comes from DuPont.
That's correct. Yeah.
Then there's one that I really loved, which is it's actually on Bandcamp. It's the bonus track. It's called oh gosh, now I can't even remember it. Can't even remember the names of my own songs. Let me do this. Let me go there. So the name of the bonus track is called "Making the World a Safer Place." Raytheon. All right. So
yeah.
So I basically chose these titles. Either I really love the phrase, so that's a clever phrase, and other times there's a marketing slogan from a company, and it kind of has the complete opposite perspective of what reality is. So that's kind of where all of my inspiration came from, at least from the titles of the pieces, and hopefully they fit the music.
Cool.
I was going to ask you, where did the pause that refreshes come from?
The pause? Oh gosh, that I'd have to look it up. That is that might be Coca-Cola or Pepsi or something like that.
Yeah, I really like that title, and I was thinking about that as I was I had posted on Facebook, and it's like, man, I'm just gonna stop and take some time and listen to your album and doing some reading. I was like, that's the pause that refreshes. I don't know what it's about.
Yeah,
that's very nice. Thank you.
Excellent. If anybody's got any questions from our audience, please do throw them into the chat room. Just give them a header like, question for Bob, or whatever, so we can pick them out in the as these things whiz by. And if we find them, we'll throw those questions at Bob and see if we can get an answer to them for you. That's great. I'm going to listen to that now, because just the song titles have pulled me in. So I need to check those out.
Yeah.
And I tell you one thing I have noticed. I mean, to be honest, I've excuse the pun, but I am familiar with your name, and I've heard a few bits here and there. But I will hold my hands up and say I've not dived into your repertoire to learn more, and that's my for shame for myself. But I'm looking through your kit lists here, and you've got a really delightful blend of standard hardware, synths that do certain things, plus modular stuff and sample libraries. And that's kind of refreshing nowadays, I think, because a lot of people kind of focus on doing stuff in modular, or they focus on doing this, and you've kind of said, I like it all, and bringing it. Was that is that a conscious decision?
Absolutely. There are some times where I will limit myself, because I think limiting yourself can help you be creative. So I did do an album called Black and Gold, which is nothing but the shared system. Mm-hmm. So I've done that, where I've said I'm just going to do something that's all modular. But lately I'm just trying to stretch myself. I'm always trying to just push myself and just get better. And so I'm trying to learn how to actually orchestrate. So that's why the Spitfire libraries were so appealing. It's like, wow, real instruments. Let me actually try using real instruments. Yeah. And they just have a fantastic, I love their aesthetic, because they create these sample libraries of violins and horns and woodwinds, and they'll give you a bunch of different flavors of that. And then they give you all these articulations, which it's almost like they're treating the orchestra like a synthesizer, and they're saying, here's a filtered version of this, right? Or here's what it sounds like when the string player just scratches, the bow across very slowly, and now you can kind of blend that into your music. So they have all those wonderful articulations. It's like, it's all beautiful to me. It's all wonderful. I want to use it all, but the key, when you have, obviously I'm very blessed, I have a lot to choose from. The key now is just, as I said, sometimes you have to limit yourself to say, okay, for this idea, I'm going to try to limit myself just within this scope right here, and see how far I can take it. And then if I need anything else after that, then I will. But just from the beginning, limiting myself to just the modular, or just the Moog 1, or just a sample library, knowing that that's not going to be the rule for the whole thing, but it allows me to get the core concept down and then expand from there. So you're not just throwing everything in the kitchen sink in there.
Sure. No, that's great. We're big fans of Spitfire audio stuff here, especially since the launch of the BBC SO in its various guises, and of course their labs range of free plugins, which are just amazing. So you'll hear no complaints about Spitfire here. In fact, I think we should get paid. Every show. Every show we end up talking about Spitfire and how great they are, and I've been watching
a company Spitfire each.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I've been watching. I'll tell you what I've been watching a little bit more of is Christian Henson's nerding videos, which is like they're about an hour long, and he had Gary Barlow on one, and who did he had somebody. Oh gosh, it's gone. But he gets a really great guest on, and they just talk about all sorts of stuff. But it's kind of nerdy and geeky, but it's all musical. And Christian Henson, damn, his enthusiasm is just so infectious, and it makes you just want to go and explore these products, because he's doing some great things. And I read somewhere
got a lot of that from me though.
I see.
I was doing that well before he was.
That's what it is.
Enthusiasm thing.
I never realised he was not professionally or classically trained. He's pretty much
about that in one of the BBC videos.
Yeah. And
I just saw one of his. So I haven't seen his nerding one yet, but I had just saw a picture of it, and it was something like Spinal Tap versus Rick Beato, and I was I'm in.
Yeah, yeah, that's the one. Cause it was Rick, and I thought I love Rick Beato. I just think he's very. There's not many people that are kind of like, he's all right. He's like, yeah, I love him, or no, I really don't like him. And I really like him, especially What Makes This Song Great, that series of videos where he breaks it down through the multi-tracks. So I love multi-tracks because you can really, learn so much, and because he knows his stuff, it's really good. Yeah, highly recommended, Rick Beato. If only he would promote us on his channel to his over 1.5 million subscribers. Just let us have a few, Rick. That would be nice. Anyway, we'll come back to Bob later on, but thanks ever so much for that, guys. So let's move on to our next news topic, and I'll just bring... before we do, Bob's Bandcamp page, here it is, bobfamiliar.bandcamp.com. Better Living Through Chemistry is available now as a digital download in all the varieties that they provide, MP3, FLAC, ALAC, WAV, and so on, for just a mere $7 US. And there's a breakdown of all the tracks there and what's been used on each. And of course, you can go into Bob's discography later on there. And big fan of Bandcamp as well. I think it's probably the best music service out there by a country mile. So more power to them. And I think they're doing another waiving fees day soon. So that's good. So let's move on.
Just to correct here real quick. If you're checking out Bod's music, check out that track "No More Tears" and just how much evolution happens in the track. It's what I was thinking about is it's like music is art. We think of when we say the word art, we think of visual art, paintings and whatnot. And it's I in my mind I was kind of likening it to a painting that you've seen, you've listened to the song. And then every time as you're just sitting and staring at it, you're seeing all these little details and things that you didn't see before, and you just keep looking at it, and there's more and more depth. And I really felt like that song in particular, but his music really has that quality to it, which I find quite interesting. Sorry, go ahead, Robbie.
No, well done. Right, so let's move on to this one. This is kind of indulging myself, really. So this is Indigenus sample libraries. Now, Indigenus sample libraries are basically one guy, Trace Collins, from the US, and I met Trace 10, 15 years ago through my work at Hollow Sun and Akai, and he was at the time doing Akai S5000/6000 libraries, and they were always just that little bit different. And this is back in the day when sample libraries weren't really that adventurous. Trace was doing stuff using key switching and lots of layers of things to come up with some great concepts. One of which was a thing called the Solid State Orchestra. And as you might guess from the name, it was an orchestra based in electronics. So it was his way of trying to get as close to a orchestral sound, but using synthesizers and sampling them and creating these instruments. Some of the stuff that came out of that library is just amazing. I'm gonna hopefully, let me just test this here. No, that's not working, so we're off to a cracking start. I was going to try and see. I'll tell you why. That's because that. No, well, I was going to try and do a demo anyway. So free for a limited time, and it's a contact library only, and that's the platform that Trace has decided to sort of focus on. is called Copernicus, and it basically uses elements of that solid state symphony library from many years ago, and he's just kind of repurposed it and put it into this lovely kind of UI. So let's play the demo and see if we don't get a copyright strike for this one. And oh, there we go. There's the audio. So there you go. I mean, you get an idea, a feel for this, and you know the images that are used in there are all NASA images, and he uses the key switching here in the contact engines. A nice little, fairly minimalist script, which is kind of the way things are going nowadays. I was really hoping that my Akai, which I've just refitted with I know exactly why it's not working. I haven't got my MIDI set up. I was going to play some examples of what the solid state symphony does. So let's see if I can bring this technical issues here. So do that in there and that in there. I'm trying to avoid using something like Logic, which will just eat up my CPU. So fingers crossed. Here we go. So hopefully you'll be able to hear this. Hopefully that gives you some idea of the kind of spacey, electronic-y nature of what's going on there. But has anybody got Contact? Anybody been able to download this? Because I don't have Contact, and so I haven't been able to test this properly.
I can't get Contact Player to work on mine. It just gets blacklisted straight away. So
Right.
I've not been able to try it. But I've watched the videos, and I am quite familiar with it. I don't know how Cryss has got on with it.
Cryss, did you get a
I don't
chance?
have. Yeah, I listened to the sound collection. I don't have any Contact stuff, and I'm a little bit ignorant about that whole ecosystem. But I hear people talking about it so much that I feel like I'm missing out on something.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't quite get it from the videos that I watched. It seemed to I get the solid state orchestra thing.
Yeah.
And is it like an audio visual
Yeah.
thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's been done, I think, really to kind of showcase some of the stuff and make it a bit of a visual thing, and maybe you can sit there playing with this thing and feel somehow inspired by the fantastic NASA imagery. Because that's the one thing whenever I'm playing this, these sounds, they have that kind of sci-fi ethereal quality, and there's just some amazing stuff. That wasn't one of them. It's just got a really nice kind of electronic, but it still sounds kind of orchestral. It's always been very inspiring. It's one of my favourite libraries, and it just seemed very coincidental that I get the S6000 with the hard, the SCSI SD drive in there, and I've been able to get back into these sounds. And he goes and releases this, but I can't.
Yeah.
I don't have Contact, and I've only got the player. And of course, this is one of those things that if you load it in the player, it only lasts for 15 minutes before it times out, which is the stupid thing that Contact.
I don't know if you remember or not. Last week we was on about like inspiration and things like that, and I said that I find visuals inspiring when I'm working with music.
Yeah,
that's why I think I get more done when I'm doing a soundtrack than I get done just working out of my own head.
Yeah,
because the visuals inspire me. Now, they might have stumbled on something they're really quite clever with these planets and things. As you're playing the sounds, and it's like synchronized to what you're doing, isn't it? I suppose if you go a bit more aggressive, you might see a picture of Mars. If you go a bit more delicate, go down to some, I don't know, stream somewhere or something.
Yeah.
But it's if you could use AI or something further down the line, and for idiots like me that can't get inspired out their own head, you can create all these images that will hopefully pull something out of the person, bring something that wouldn't come out normally,
Yeah.
So I think I really admire that bit of it. I think I couldn't see myself going mad over the sounds. It sounded a little bit Wing Commander to me, that kind of feel. But
yeah,
there's something there. Definitely, there's something there. And seeing as it's free,
I mean, I just grabbed it anyway in the hope that maybe one day I'll get contact. But apparently there is an SFZ version, or SFZ if you're in the US version of the main orchestral patch included in the download. I've spoken to Trace a number of times over the years and said, I wish you'd just carry on doing contact if you like. And I know that the Akai format, is no use to you now commercially, but maybe double head it, do something, do the stuff in contact, but also do it in UVI or even a more general thing. I also understand that the scripting nature of things like contact adds this dimension where you couldn't do this in just a regular kind of free sample player type thing.
Yeah.
But so check out Trace's webpage, and if you do buy anything, just tell him that I sent you, because I'd like him to know that I still think of his stuff really very highly. And if you are there, and let me just show you this. So he has a whole bunch of stuff. A lot of it is there's a lot of guitars, and his guitars. So this is back in the early 2000s when I kind of first stumbled across his stuff, and he was doing all of this key switching. So you'd have a plucked set of sounds, strums, mutes, all of that stuff. Way back, with the Akai hardware. This is before software sampling really kind of took off, and he was doing some just crazy cool stuff with guitars. And he's carried that whole thing on with the scripted library. So you've got the Renegade acoustics, there's a resonator, there's mandolins, there's a specific acoustic strumming thing, there's ukuleles. I'm not sure if he still has it. There you go, he's got the dulcimers. The dulcimers are beautiful. They really, really are lovely, lovely sounds. And then you've got the solid state symphony there. There's a light version, and then there's the full version, which really has utilized the contact scripting very beautifully, that one. So lots of really, really cool libraries. And if you look at the prices, so for example, if we go to the Renegade acoustic, it's $69. It's a 3.5 gig download, and that's nothing in terms of sample libraries. Again, $59 for the Renaissance. Solid State Symphony is a mere $59. I mean, it's just, he's giving this stuff away literally. And then he has a $5 range. There's a lap harp, electric guitars, Nashville guitars, lead guitars, classic electric pianos, all sorts of stuff. So please go and throw some business Trace's way, and you won't be disappointed. I'll guarantee you that, if you're a content user anyway. Bob.
Sorry.
I was just going to throw it to Bob. Have you ever used any of this stuff? Does this stuff interest you at all?
I haven't used these libraries. I'm definitely interested. I'll go check it out. I think one of the challenges when I was reading the documentation, and I'm not sure if I got this 100% right, is that you might need the full contact player. There's a free player, and then there's the full player, and the full player, I think, is a couple of $100, if I recall, something like that.
Yeah.
And so if he requires the full player, and you don't already own the contact player, you might need to also make that investment. I think that might be one of the small hurdles that you might have to deal with. I have it, by the way, because I've been playing all the Spitfire libraries, which all run through Contact. Yeah. So sort of in that ecosystem, but more on the orchestral side. But I'm definitely going to go check out his work.
Yeah, please do. And it's exactly right what you say. So virtually all of these libraries do require the full version of Contact, not the Contact player, which is the free thing that you can download, because to have something work in there uncrippled, the developer has to pay Native Instruments a significant addition on their license fee, which is, I think we've spoken about this before. It's not one of my favourite.
It's not right, though.
No, it's not one of my favourite things that they do. Especially when you compare it to other kind of scripted instrument ecosystems, such as the UVI one, where they you pay the one license fee and you can use it in their free player UVI workstation, or you can use it in Falcon, which is their kind of I don't want to say it's their kind of Contact, but it's the full blown synthesizer, sampler, everything. I mean, it's just the best instrument out there.
Is there an advantage, say, for like Spitfire audio? Bob mentioned that he uses it within Contact, so I just use Spitfire as the standalone plugin. Mm-hmm. Is there any advantage to having that stuff within this Contact library or player, anything like that?
Bob, do you want to answer that one?
I was going to say the way that Spitfire uses it, I believe, is for licensing. So for example, if you pull down Labs, they're going to use the free Contact player, which they've created a UI for that. I think that's what's going on. Then if you buy one of their higher end libraries where you need a license, that runs in Contact, but then you have to register it through Native Instruments.
They've started to move, haven't they, from Contact to their own, because their own player, which is the one that they use in Labs, is their own custom player that was designed for them by a video games company of all people, because they had this kind of concept of the UI being really simple. So like if you look at BBC ESO, it's their own custom player, whether it's standalone or as a plugin, but they still produce stuff in Contact. So they kind of have this duality going on. Some's in their own player, some's in the Contact player, and I guess there must be some advantages, for the scripting. I don't know. It's an interesting one, that.
I don't know enough about it to know the difference, but certainly, from a marketing perspective, just their presence in the marketplace, their standalone players are beautiful, and that very appealing. Where when it's running in Contact, it feels a little imprisoned.
Yeah.
From UI experience, I wish that was out and I could float it in a separate window, and So that's as an end user, that's my experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody just said in here, some of the older Spitfire library stuff requires full Contact, but pretty much all the new releases can also be used in Contact Player. There's a company called Sample Logic, who I've been fortunate enough to have used some of their things. They do everything in Contact Player. So when you buy the thing, you get Contact Player as well if you haven't already got it. And they have just launched one of their libraries as a Contact library for the actual full version. So they've kind of gone the opposite way. Instead of going from full-blown Contact to the player, they've gone from the player to the full-blown thing. So there's just these. I like standards, but I also understand that standards can sometimes cripple ingenuity and innovation. But hey, there you go. Indiginus Sample Library. So that's indiginus.com, indiginus.com. And it's available now as a free download. I'm not entirely sure how long that's for, but I would hurry. If you're going to get that, just get it now. Doesn't say when that will not be free. So it just says for a limited time, go and get it. Talking of more free stuff, because we like free stuff, IK Multimedia have launched a new drum library for their very successful Uno drum machine that they launched over a year ago now. and this time it has been compiled by a guy who's very popular, especially in the modular world, Suit and Tie Guy, who's also a member of our group over at Pro Synth Network. And his STG Soundlabs have created a free set of 54 samples for Uno Drum, free of charge, but obviously only they're in a specific Uno Drum format, so you can't just use it anywhere. And they're all sourced from analog modular synthesizers, of which, as you can see here, there's one of them just there. Of course, Suit and Tie Guy hosts NobCon in Chicago every year, so he knows his stuff. Cryss, you've had a chance to upload these and have a play. I've had a very limited tinker with them. What do you think of these?
Yeah, so I have not had the Uno Drum for too long, but I really like this. I was able to get it because I've bought a bunch of other IK stuff. Mm-hmm. That I was able to use jam points and all that stuff, and then bought it on the sale price and whatnot. So, I mean, it ended up, for a really cool little drum machine, it was only, I think, $116 or $118 shipped for me. Cool. And it's been something like, I just wanted to have a hardware drum machine. I don't need it. When I write songs, I usually will use Easy Drummer in the box because it just ends up being so much easier, if you can imagine that. But this has been fun, and I've been using it a bit with my Euro rack. And so previously I had the original sound set on here. Then I downloaded the editor and the sound packs, and I got into the Roland sound pack, and I never made it out because it sounds great, but it's got the old Roland style drum machines. There's some other ones that I want to check out, like the CR78. I think it's the one. So I just put this on a couple of days ago, but I haven't spent a whole lot of time playing with it, like maybe a half an hour with the Suit and Tie Guy stuff. I'm going to play you a little snippet of it. One thing I'll mention here is that, Robbie and I were talking before, it works a little bit odd in that when you load a sample set on there, whatever settings that you have on here, whatever patterns, and within a kit, whatever. So each of these sound sources, like snare, there'll be 1 out of 5 will be analog, and then the other 4 will be samples in there. And so whatever you have selected already on here, it just populates it with the presets that you put on here. So this is not a preset that's particularly created for his sound set, and it might contain mixed samples or a mix of his samples with the original analog. But this is kind of the vibe you get versus the other more traditional drum samples, is that it has a little bit more in the area of pitch samples or pitch drum sounds. Here we go. So let me go through a couple of the kits real quick here. This is the same pattern. So there's a little bit of old video game. So, anyways, it's not the type of area that I would go and seek out as far as drum samples and drum sounds, but there's some kind of fun stuff in there. So if you already have the Uno Drum, it's a fun one. Again, to get you out of a rut, I think, is probably where I would describe it. If you're always using your Roland drum machine, you guys all know I can't talk, so the stuff that's happening in here can never quite make it out. But you're using your Roland drum samples. You get stuck in that loop of it. You want to try to break out and go, I want to make something more experimental sounding, or to come on something within here that will spark some other idea that'll send you in a different direction. That's how I think it's going to work out really well for me.
Yeah. I must admit, I went through the sounds and I thought, these are not, they're not for me. and that's, I'm not saying they're bad. It's great. It's free stuff. They're just not for me. But if you are looking for that kind of modular drum sound, drum sounds that aren't samples of drum machines or actual drums, this is actually quite a neat little addition to the collection, because there's already 10 libraries in the anthology pack that cover a whole bunch of vintage classic old drum machines, that kind of crunchy 8-12-bit stuff. And you've also got the analog engine in there, which I particularly like in here. The analog engine in the Uno drum gives you there are 2 kicks, a snare, closed and open hi-hat, and the clap are all analog, and then everything else is PCM samples, and they're small PCM samples, so they're nice and kind of gritty and dirty. The one thing go ahead.
And then of course it has the compression, and if you want to add a little dirt to it, you can do that right on the machine.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was kind of interesting for me is that the last drum machine that I had, my first drum machine that I ever had was one of the old Roland DR110. I don't know if you guys remember. It came in a little case, and it was silver and blue, and it had the little grid screen in the corner. And I mean, it was out of date by the time that I got it. But my first recordings on a 4-track were done with that thing, and they've got that as one of the Roland sound packs, which was kind of cool. Sorry, Robbie.
No, there are some really nice sounds in there that from, I think my first drum machine that I ever played was a DR55, the Boss, little black and orange thing with a dial on it.
I think that was my first experience of a drum machine as well.
And then I moved, sort of slowly through them, and so whenever I can find samples of those kind of things. But the one thing that I have a beef with the Uno drum is the fact that you've got 54 samples and 6 analog sounds. You've got 60 sounds to choose from. Each pan has 5 sounds, and obviously with the kind of the factory stuff, you've got 5 kicks on one pad, you've got another 5 kicks on another, you've got 5 rim shots, 5 cowbells, 5 cymbals, blah blah blah. When it gets to some of these drum machines, or certainly with Suit and Tie Guys stuff, they don't always necessarily fall into that category. So some of the sounds you'll find under the rim button or the cowbell button or the ride button are not those sounds. They are other sounds, which is great, but there is no visual feedback from the machine, because obviously it's a small footprint thing. It's only got a little LED display in there. So I've always spoken to the guys at IK and said, look, you need to do something to make it visible. And I thought I would share this with the group, and I'm happy to share this with anyone that wants it. I've not really met many people that do. This is my Uno Drum Anthology sample map, and I thought that they could knock something like this up, because it looks like the surface of the Uno drum. And then you just have your sample names, so you can actually see what's in each bank. Just either looking at the screen or just looking at a piece of paper. But that's always been one of my gripes with this machine. Other than that, it's fantastic for putting a beat together and messing around with it in real time, messing around with the tunings and the grittiness and the delays and the stuttering that they have in there is a really fun thing to have. And that's my only beef with that. So there you go.
It would be interesting if they did maybe just a higher version of this with stereo outputs, but then to take your idea, and I love what you've done with that. I wish they would put out some forms like that so we could at least see what's what in these sample packs, but to have maybe little scribble strips on them.
Yeah.
Like Line 6 has been using them on like the HXFX. And it's great because it doesn't have to be assigned to anything in particular. But if you had a little scribble strip on, Tom 1, Tom 2, kick, displaying, oh, hey, this is analog kick 1, and you've got a high decay on it.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the thing is you've got to balance, I guess, with these units, the cost. With that kind of thing. And for what you're getting, I mean, you paid something like $120. I don't know what the full price is. It used to be $249, didn't it? I think. But you're getting a drum machine with a capacitive touch surface that's got analog, proper analog drum sounds in there, as well as sample stuff for $250, even if it's 200. It's still a really good bargain. And I think if you start, I agree that something like that, little scribble strips or just some kind of indicator, just to help, because you've got so much going on there. With the synth, it's not so bad, the Uno synth, but with the Uno drum, you just need some referencing. That's always just been my and like you say with the outputs, that I think a lot of people have been put off the fact that it's a mono output, and that you can't even break out the kick, the snare, the hi-hat, and one other thing, which I think.
Have you seen on Gear Sluts, there's a guy that is publishing mods for it,
yes,
where he's going up the case and putting all those outputs or.
Yeah, and IK Multimedia were publishing that on their social media channels, which I thought, okay, so you voided the warranty, but they've gone, hey, look, this guy's doing what we couldn't do, and if you're happy to do that, go for it. I like that, and we mentioned this before. I need to bring it up, but was it Korg were doing some? They were promoting Full Bucket Music's.
Fury 800.
Yeah, the Fury 800. So
I was really surprised to see that.
Yeah, how cool is it that some guy has produced this plugin, which is a effective, not a copy, but an emulation of one of their old vintage synthesizers, and the company themselves said, "Hey guys, look, this guy's done this for free, and it's really cool, and we love it," and so promotes it. What a great, I like that sort of thing. Makes me warm and fuzzy. Let's go to our guest, Bob. Uno drum. Are you familiar? Oh God, I said it again.
I don't have that product. The price point looks awesome, and I met Suit and Tie guy at Moog Fest last year. Very nice guy, super smart, very talented. I'm sure the sounds he's come up with that modular system he has are pretty awesome. So if you like sort of those otherworldly types of drum sounds, that's what it sounded like to me. Those great modular types of tones. It sounds awesome.
Yeah.
For me, drum machines, man, it's been a journey for me the last 4 years. I've gone through 3 drum machines to where I am right now. So I started with the Arturia Drum Brute, and I didn't care for that, and then I went to the Roland TR8 before they came out with the updated version of that was sample based. That was okay. I sold that. Then I went to 1010 Music's Black Box, which is just a little desktop unit with a touch screen. But when Akai announced MPC-1, I've always had my eyes on those MPCs, and so I picked it up when it came out, and I'm extremely happy with it. It's got the workflow that works for me. It's like that's what you're looking for with any of these instruments, right? Is what's the workflow?
Yeah.
Can I get to the sounds that I want? How quickly can I get my idea, expressed? Can I edit it, right? Can I put some human feel, or just, for example, with the MPC-1, I love the fact you put a hi-hat line down. Of course, when you first do that, everything's the same velocity, and then just to go through and kind of swipe the shape of an LFO over that, and all of a sudden it sounds more human.
Yeah.
Little things like that kind of sold me on the MPC. So I'm right now very happy with the MPC-1. But like I said, I'm between projects. I'm gassing, so I might go out and go, oh, let me just try out the IK Multimedia's drum machine. I'll give it a shot. For that price point, man, it's hard to beat.
Well, I mean, no, go ahead.
Go ahead, Robbie.
No, I'd say I highly recommend it. I mean, it's great fun. It's properly, it's like a good old fashioned, drum machine. I mean, I cut my teeth. So my first one was a DR55, which you really couldn't do much programming on. But then I moved to, what did I go to? I think it might have been the Korg DDD5, and then, or it was either that or the Casio RZ1. And the Casio RZ1 is kind of in that traditional 909 808 style box, but it's got some extra spots for samples in there, your own samples. and it's got individual faders for each channel, so that's great. You can and individual outputs, and it's just really, really good. But what I've missed about a drum machine is just that simplicity where I can just hit record and just start putting in things or just playing stuff in and it just looping and then just messing around. And the fact that you've got these performance tools such as you got the random thing, so you can just hold random and then hit hi-hat and it will just chuck in a random hi-hat pattern. If you don't like it, hit it again, and you keep hitting it until you get something you like. And then you can do this stutter, and there's like 15 different types of stutter effect that you can choose from. So different time signatures, different kind of pauses and divisions, and there's a humanized function, and there's the velocity functions that you can mess around with. It's just it's just instantly fun. Whenever I've demonstrated that out at trade shows, people just love it. Big smiles on their faces. It's a proper old school thing. Cryss, sorry, you wanted to?
Oh, I was just curious. So because Bobby, you're so into modular, I was just thinking about the whole sampling thing, and I've really been putting it off. And in fact, if I end up getting an Iridium or a Quantum, that would really be the first area that I would spend any amount of time sampling. So for me, making drum sounds on the modular, I'm just way too lazy to do it and inexperienced. But would that be something, or has that been something that you have done with your MPC? Have you been creating your own drum sounds, or you just find stuff you like and use?
Great question. I think, fundamentally, I'm very lazy. So the act of going through and creating my own samples, I haven't done that. Now, on the Make Noise, I have the Morphogene. So that does allow me to sample what's happening. I've done something where I've created some samples of, say, of a Moog pad, and then taken it on the Morphogene and then modulated it and manipulated it there. So I have done that. Creating a whole set of samples on the MPC, I haven't done that yet. But I was trying to think what else, or something else but I also have then also created my own drum sounds on modular as well. So, I think the Eurorack format is excellent for creating your own unique drum sounds. So that's something that you could try out. But the act of sampling, it's a fair amount of work, right? There's a fair amount of process there, and I like immediacy. Like I said, I just want to go and boom. So working with the sample libraries that come with MPC, or go out, and I've actually pulled down samples that others have created and loaded them up on the MPC. That I can do. I can do that. I know how to hit the load button. I'm very, very comfortable with that. So that works well for me, but I haven't yet gotten to let me go create like a library of drum sounds for the MPC. That's probably on the list of things to go learn how to do, but it's not something I'm doing right now.
Real quick, so in the chat room, there's some questions as to what model MPC you use, and also what is an MPC.
Okay,
seriously?
So it's the MPC-1, which just came out. So it's the smallest form factor that they offer, that they just released, I think, back in January or February, and but their entire line of MPC instruments. Go to akaipro.com, check out their line of MPC instruments. They've got now, I think, three or four, and they're all different sizes, different levels of capability. From the MPC-1, which is great form factor, and by the way has CV out, so you can actually integrate it with your Eurorack, and all the way up to an MPC that can be your entire DAW, right? So, and do your entire production on it. So they have a number of different price points.
Yeah, the MPC has been something for me over the years that I've worked for. I've created content for it, for Akai and various others, but I just can't get my head around the paradigm, the whole use of it. The traditional MPCs, before Akai Japan went and tanked, there's kind of classics. So I used to have the MPC 1000, and I've still got the 500. But those big, the 2000s, the 3000s, the 4000s. And I'm in awe of anybody that can use those as the center of their music production. Once you've got that paradigm figured out, in you know what you're doing, it's so easy to knock something up. But I've just never. I'm linear. I have to have everything on a big screen. I need to see it all in visual and that kind of thing. But whereas the MPC, I've seen some really crazy and stupidly clever stuff done on those things, and it's nice to see Akai have actually come back to the standalone MPC format, because they lost it when Akai Japan went down, and they were bought out by the InMusic guys. They just became a controller company mostly, and there's some good controllers, but the Machine took over, I think, didn't it? Native Instruments Machine took over. That kind of workflow, and Ableton, in terms of software and that kind of clip launching and doing all that kind of stuff. And then they've come back, and they've come back really well, and they seem to be gaining a lot of fans. Bob is one great example.
Would you say like the original MPC, that would probably be most identified with like late 80s and 90s rap and hip hop?
Well, it's funny because
was that the Machine?
Yeah, I mean it is the Machine of that kind of hip hop R&B, and it still is today. They are still highly sought after and extensively used in those genres. But I was always surprised when I would hear stories of support calls that were received here at Akai UK from people who say, "Oh, I've got a problem with my MPC." And who's that? Oh, it's Mark King from Level 42, or it's so and so from. And these are just people who, Peter Gabriel. You just wouldn't think Peter Gabriel would have an MPC, but in his writing rig at Real World, there's an MPC 4000, I think now, or a 3000. I can't remember. But they're multi-purpose tools, and they're not. They can be just a drum machine, but they can also be a great ideas machine. And even if you're not sampling into them, and you're just putting some libraries in there that give you some riffs or some some beats or whatever, they can be really instantly gratifying systems. So hip hop is I guess where they're all at. But there you go. Shall we talk about the elephant in the room, because we haven't talked about it, and it's coming up close to 10 o'clock, and everyone's nodding, and I think Chris is just wipe a little bit there, mate, just a little bit. Shall we talk about Waldorf Iridium? Let's do that. So let me just. Oh, hang on a minute. What's happened there? That's not good. Right, let me just change my my topics capture here, because I've got to mess that right up. Here we go. So Waldorf. So it seemed to be leaked a few days ago, and I don't know whether that prompted them to kind of officially announce it. We're not going to play all of this, but let me just bring this. This is the Waldorf Iridium sound demo, which I guess anyone that's really interested in this has already listened to a number of times. That sound pretty big, doesn't it? So there you go. That's well, don't do too much of that, because we always get a copyright strike if we use. They're not just doing it on songs and stuff. They're doing it if you play a little clip. They've got a video algorithm now that they'll give you a strike on saying you've copied this video from somewhere else. Anyway. The news is that this week Waldorf have announced the Iridium, which is ostensibly it is a desktop version of the Quantum, except it doesn't have the analog filters, but it does double the polyphony. I think they're the two key points to take away from this. But now we have this beautiful desktop module that I must say does look rather lovely. and judging by the sound demos, sounds amazing too. It features wavetable, virtual analog waveforms, particle sampling and granular, resonator and kernels. Kernels being introduced with the 2.0 OS of Quantum. It's got a patch memory of over 7,000 patches. I mean, we could go into the technical details. Seems to have all the connectivity sorted out on the back there, be it USB, MIDI, audio, and I believe CV is all in there as well. Micro SD card slots for storage, I guess, and imports of other things. Let's go to Cryss. I think we'll start with Cryss because I think he's gassing hard over this one. Your thoughts, sir?
Yeah. So for a long time, the synth on my list has been the Quantum, but I'm still paying off a Moog 1, so had to wait a little bit on that. But it's I got to play the Quantum back in January, and I really enjoyed it. And one of the things that appealed to me is that, I mean, I've got a pretty good mix of digital and analog synthesizers, but most of everything is subtractive. And so where the Quantum would open me up in hardware, I have software that will do this stuff, but hardware would be on, you know, the things like the granular synthesis and the resonators, and you know, it has, and also with the FM stuff that it can do, because I believe you're able to import DX7 patches into it. Perks up Robbie's ears.
I did not know that.
I would have thought this would have been like your ideal thing. Like you can do sampling and FM stuff. But of course, as you said, it's pretty much the companion to the Quantum. They got rid of the analog filters. Right now, it has double the voices, but Rolf has said that they're looking into expanding the Quantum to 16 voices. He doesn't know if that's going to be possible or not, but that's something that they would like to do. And they are also working on OS 3.0 for the Quantum and the Iridium, which will, he just said, bring lots of other goodies that'll be fun. But this really interested me when I was looking at prices on it from, you know, versus the Kyra, which I believe is about I think it was $2,300 or $2,400 here in the U.S. But the one thing that's getting me on this is that the first reports of price, and I haven't checked this morning, but people were saying that they were calling Sweetwater, and Sweetwater was telling them $3,000, which seriously curbs my interest in it. So,
well, according to the
we'll have to see on that.
I would say, according to the specification list, right down the very bottom, the MSRP is €1,960 ex tax. So I don't know, throw a couple of hundred.
That's about $2,225.
Yeah. So I think that's what you're looking at there. So it's still high end, but it's not as high as those guys have been.
Yeah. Now, if it's around, you know, $2,300, man, this I would forego the Quantum and get this. If it ends up being that it's higher, this may be a non-issue in a couple of days, then I'll be like, maybe use Quantum is where I would go. But either way, this whole series of synthesizers, the Quantum and the Iridium, are very interesting to me, and seem like they would just be a very fun playground to go in many different unusual directions, areas that I don't normally go with programming analog synthesizers.
Yeah, sure. Bob, I think you're interested in this yourself. What are your thoughts, initial thoughts on the Iridium?
Yeah, so I've got, you know, a room full of analog, so I'm ready to make the leap. And so, as I was saying earlier, I'm between projects, started to go out, what synths have I not dug into enough to really understand? Started to look at Hydra Synth, and you know, watched about 2 hours worth of Hydra Synth, and that's all it takes, you know. And all of a sudden, I'm, you know, figuring out finances and you know, and how I'm going to explain it and all of that. So I'm going through that process, And then the next day they announced this, and it's like, oh wow. So now it's absolutely gorgeous. It's so powerful. It makes me want either the Quantum or the Iridium. So it made me go and dig further into Quantum and go back and look at that. And because the one thing I have found about myself, and again, I think on this call we've learned a lot about my little pet peeves. So here's another one, which is for whatever reason, I don't work well with desktop synths that don't have a keyboard. I've discovered, probably because I'm a piano player, I like having the keyboard. And I like kind of just working with the synths, with the knobs, but playing the keyboard as I'm doing that. And the separation of, let's say, a controller from a desktop unit breaks my workflow somehow. It's a mental. I'm in a 12-step program. I'm trying to work through it, but it's challenging for me. So I actually might lean towards the Quantum, but I'd have to find out about the 8 voice versus 16 voice. That's an interesting little twist. So, but absolutely fantastic instrument, and a whole nother world of sounds, which I currently don't have in my palette.
Yeah. Ben, are you gassing for this?
Yeah, I am a bit. I think it might be a bit high, priced a bit high. I think they've taken away the analog filters. I've gone out of focus again.
Your camera's drunk.
I know, yeah. They've taken away the analog filters and doubled the polyphony. But like Cryss said, the analog filters are the reason that the polyphony is restricted. So with the OS update, they're gonna include the Iridium's digital filters into the Quantum, which should allow them to double the polyphony.
Okay.
So you're not really gaining anything with that polyphony. It's because they're using a digital filter and not the analog one.
Yeah.
So I think you're losing an analog filter, you're losing the keyboard. There's a couple of other little bits. Essentially, they are very closely related, but one isn't a stripped down version or an improved version of the other. They are different beasts. But I just think they could have priced it a little bit less. But Rolf did say in his interview that there is possibly plans for a third member of the family.
Oh, right. Okay.
And even one, possibly priced around the same area as the smaller things that Waldorf do, like the Blofeld and that around the 300.
How much is the Quantum, by the way? Because it's not something I've explored. What is the going rate for a Quantum?
Anyone?
I think it's about 4,000 US, isn't it?
Yeah. Sweden has them up for like 43 or 4,400. Okay. So I'd get it less than that.
If our guesses are right, Iridium's about half the price of a Quantum, and you're not getting necessarily less. You're just getting some slightly different. So you're losing. I'll come on to this next point in a minute about the filters, but you're losing the analog filters and the keyboard, which Bob rightly points out is in my opinion, a pretty important part. But you're gaining, extra polyphony, and I'm assuming the Quantum has the whole touchscreen thing and everything as well. Yeah. So, it does seem. I don't know. I'm going to talk about the filters because that's the first thing that everybody's been talking about is the filters. Oh, it hasn't got analog filters. Well, so because there are good digital filters. Yeah. There are bad digital filters. There are bad analog filters. So is it that important to have analog filters if you've got really, really good digital ones?
The Iridium's got a PPG emulation in it on the filters.
Okay.
So that's quite nice.
Yeah.
But it hasn't got. I don't know what's happened to my camera. I'm actually gone.
Yeah, well, you're just blurry. I mean, we could just make you out. You look like I've had about 10 pints of strong stuff.
I've only been on lemon and lime,
Oh, no,
whatever it's
shocking.
Called. Yeah,
but yeah,
this kind of stuff is no good.
Yeah, no, don't do that. That's scary. No, I think Andrew Brooks brought this up, or somebody brought this up on Randy's show yesterday, talking about the filters, and there are really good digital filters out there. So I don't get why that's such a big thing. There are more important things to maybe get worried about. I don't know.
I kind of agree, because if you have some really great digital filters, and I've liked the Roland ACB filters. They've been doing like on the System 8 or Roland Cloud. Yeah, they can sound really good. And so, when you're at the difference between 8 and 16 voices of polyphony, I'll take those extra 8 voices in the digital filter, sure. And I think that's going to really come down to which direction do I go for Quantum Iridium, is if the Quantum's able to get that update, because I would rather, probably I'd rather have the Quantum. The keybed is a FITAR keybed. I can't remember if it's the 8 or the 9, which it is, but those are my favorite keybeds. I got one on the Moog 1 and the OB6. And it plays wonderful. It's got a nice feel to it. The touch screen is awesome. I am a little concerned with the Iridium, because where they have placed the touch screen is, on top of, to demonstrate. I mean, when you've got it on the top corner and you've got tons of buttons right here, or knobs right here, I'm just thinking, like, you're going to have it not flat on a desk probably. You most likely have it. I use a laptop stand for my microphone. I'm using it here. But even so, like, kind of coming to that screen, there's a lot of like little small stuff that you would do on it, really fine type things that I feel like I'm just going to be bumping those oscillator knobs all the time.
Yeah.
So you'll be probably to change something, and then all of a sudden your pitch goes up 2 octaves or something.
Yeah.
It does.
Far be it for me to criticise Axel Hartman, but I would have swapped it round the other way. Had all the knobs across the top and the touch screen and the pads at the bottom.
Yeah.
I don't know why they've done it that way.
Because the Essence FM has got the screen in the middle, but I mean, obviously it's a more horizontal thing, so you've got stuff either side, but there's nothing obstructing the screen, nothing you can knock. Whereas this, you now point that out, and also it's got a grid of 16 buttons, but I think somebody said yesterday they're not even touch sensitive. So,
they're not.
No.
Yeah. No, they're not. But they were saying that they were intending that to be more like a sequencer, really. Okay. It's a point where you can maybe audition the sound that you're working on, a bit like me with the broken JD800. But it's primarily used for sequencing and generating patterns and what have you.
No, I think it's the natural assumption when you see that MPC style grid on an instrument or a keyboard that it's going to be pads that you can touch sensitive stuff. Yeah. But I guess if it's for that, then that's fine. I like the sound of it. I like the look of it. It's got some issues. I think maybe, as Bob said, I kind of I prefer a keyboard. If I'm going to buy, if there are two versions of something, like say Hydrasynth, for example. If I'm in the market for Hydrasynth, I'm buying the keyboard Hydrasynth. I'm not buying the desktop one. Because it's just another thing to plug in to play it. Not that I'm the greatest keyboard player.
That point though is I ended up getting the desktop Hydrasynth, even though I share that same philosophy. If I can buy the keyboard version, I'll get the keyboard. But I played in the same time. I played the Hydrasynth keyboard and the Summit and Prophet 6 and a whole bunch of other synthesizers all in one sitting. And the Quantum, I mean, that thing felt amazing. But the Hydrasynth, playing that in the Summit after the Quantum, I was like, these keybeds are not really that great. Of course, with the Hydrasynth, I just felt like, you get that poly aftertouch thing with it, but the difference between playing the Prophet 6 or the Quantum and then the Hydra and the Summit, I didn't feel. I don't know. You have the keyboard version of the Hydrasynth, right? Ben?
Yeah.
How much is it different for you? Because this may be me being a guitarist and not that great of a synth player that I was like unusually fussy about it. Do you feel like they play a little more similarly, or do you feel like that one is superior to the other?
You know what? It sounds really stupid me saying this, but every time I use it, I'm so blown away by the polyphonic aftertouch that I've never concentrated on how good it is as a. Do you know what I mean? How good is this action? Because every time I play it, I'm like leaning into different notes, and I'm like, "Wow, this is great!" And
I Vangelis.
yeah, I was just like, when you said it, then I was just like playing it. I thought, yeah, it feels all right. It probably feels better than the V-Synth keyboard. You know, it's a little bit smoother.
I think nowadays most keybeds are good. They're not awful. They're good. Some are exceptional.
Yeah.
Very few are awful. And so I think, I could live with an average keybed because I'm not a professional or competent even, keyboard player. But I do appreciate a good keyboard. Something that, like you say, you can lean into, to get that kind of expression through the aftertouch and stuff. But I mean, I've got this Arturia Keylab thing here, and it's awful because you put some aftertouch on and the keys are going like this, and you think, I'm going to break this. I'm so going to break this because it just feels and looks flimsy. But on the other hand, it's, apart from a few broken key return stoppers, which are easily fixed with a little bit of super glue, it's a solid controller and it's done me proud. So, I think we can, cut some slack there. But I don't know. It's these are expensive instruments. However, digital's the new analog. Everyone's going into digital again,
everybody's,
and it's relentless now. I mean, it's just more and more, and I'm loving it. As a digital synthesizer fan, I'm loving the fact that every new product seems to be a digital synth. Get in.
Bob's got to catch us up, yeah.
Yeah, we've got to change Bob's layout there a little bit.
Yeah,
we can replace that, I'm sure. So there you go. That's Iridium, announced this week. Has anybody said when it's going to be available? Has there been
I think in Europe it's already available.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, they got the first shipment out, but there's a little bit of a delay with the second lot. But there is a batch out there.
Wow, they kept that quiet right up to the last second there. That's impressive.
So we Bob and I get early on the Moog and sequential, and you guys get the Waldorf and the Behringer, and
yeah, it's a big crap that actually, you know what I mean?
It's a trade-off. Like, dang, I'm not going to get that for a while.
The thing is, they all probably come from China anyway. No, I mean, Waldorf just to sort of say about Waldorf, they've done some pretty cool things. I know, again, yes, I'm going to refer to Ranzi's show yesterday where Andrew was, positively getting moist about the gusset around Strike Effect, which he thinks is just amazing. And then you've got the STVC, which takes that and adds the vocoder stuff in there. Kyra seems to get... It's very, it's very Marmite, isn't it? It's, some people love it, some people hate it. It seems to be very dividing there. But then Blofeld always, that went down really, really well with a lot of people. And now Quantum, of course, and Iridium. I need to see. The thing is, I need to go to see Simon Alexander because he gets all this stuff. He just goes out and buys it first round. So then I can go and play with it and make my own mind up about it. But unfortunately, with lockdown, that's not possible. Yeah. But the only Waldorf thing I can say I own is the PPG plugin because I do like a bit of PPG wave. So they've got my money in that regard.
I've got a pulse and a microwave.
Yeah,
and I did have the Strike Effect, but I didn't really. I don't know. It didn't really click with me.
No.
Yeah.
It's horses for courses.
Yeah.
The only Waldorf piece of gear I have is my KB37.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Can you guys see that there?
Yeah. That looks nice.
It does.
Yeah, it's a nice little thing, that. Yeah, so there you go.
Moog.
So Waldorf.
I'm on the waiting list for the Expressive V Osmos, which
yeah.
we're probably looking at, I'd say winter. I think they said winter time, whatever. I don't know if that's north of the equator or south of the equator, but winter time at some point. No date associated with
that's been around, in people's minds now for a long while. I can't remember when that debuted, but
it was a while back.
It still hasn't shipped, which is funny, isn't it? Some stuff like Iridium, they managed to keep it under their hat until when they can actually ship it, and so as soon as they announce it, you can go and buy one. Great. And then you get other stuff that they announce it and everyone's going, yay, fantastic, and then we've got to wait a year for it.
That's something that I don't understand about the Quantum. Is that it hasn't it got like it doesn't do poly aftertouch, the Quantum, does it? But it can receive MPE data.
I don't think MPE is done yet, if I recall correctly, but it is set up to receive poly aftertouch. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Wagyu might be able to answer that because he's got a Quantum. So if Wagyu gets to this point, then please let us know.
I was digging through my, getting reacquainted with the Akai, the S6000, over the last couple of days, and I noticed, and it's something I just forgotten about. It's got an aftertouch setting where you can change between channel and polyphonic, and I'm guessing it can receive polyphonic aftertouch from a suitable keyboard, but I don't have one to mess around with, except Ben does. So because I never programmed for it, so I never created stuff for the S6000 with polyphonic aftertouch in mind, because back then nobody really had it unless you had one of the old dinosaur synths. So yeah, it's interesting. Right, so I think that's pretty much it. But I do have this. I'm not sure, because again, I'm not sure if you guys get the audio sent through. But Microsoft Songsmith. Let's play a clip.
Yeah.
Let's bring this up.
Supposed to come up with a campaign for glow-in-the-dark towels. I wouldn't even buy a glow-in-the-dark towel. But if I don't come up with something today, I'm done.
I'm singing with my laptop,
it's awful.
making up new songs.
Oh, I can't. I'm sorry. I can't. Whoever the
It's a company of nerds. Cut us some slack, all right?
It's this whole, it's not just the fact that the software is probably the antithesis of everything that we stand for musically, but it's the awfulness of the advert itself. It's just so bad. What
if you're gonna be bad, you have to go all in. All
yeah,
right? Just
and they went. They definitely went. What happened was, did Songsmith ever do a? Did it become a thing? Did it sell?
No. It's in what we call the boneyard.
Yeah, best place for it.
The whole boneyard of software that doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, thank you, Microsoft, for that.
Until like a bunch of lads in New York like adopt it as some sort of new hip hop tool.
But let's just say, because we're seeing more and more implementation of machine learning and AI in music in the last 2 or 3 years, wasn't this kind of like ground zero for that kind of thing?
It was.
Well, if you noticed, it came from Microsoft Research.
Yeah.
So you've got a whole division of the company that just does advanced research, and a lot of what they do never sees the light of day. And other times it gets blended into products over time, but that's where all the advanced, they're doing a lot with quantum computing these days, and they've been doing AI for many years, and voice to text and text to voice capabilities, so all those cognitive services that are now finding their way into all kinds of products Yeah, so that's our R&D department.
I've still got the video running here. I've just flicked it back onto the show. Some of the actors in here look incredibly familiar, but you know they look younger. So yeah, it's
not going to come on again.
It's just.
I think what we learned from this is that Terminator got it a little bit wrong, and it's not like some chess playing computer that becomes Skynet. That it's Songsmith.
Yeah.
That's the origin of the AI that takes over the world.
Oh dear.
Be afraid. Yes.
That's scary stuff. There we go. Anyway, I just thought seeing we've got Bob in the room, we thought we'd end on that one there.
How about just a couple questions for Bob?
Yeah, sure.
Wrap up. So one that Inky asked, and quite a while back. I'm sorry we didn't get to it sooner, but Inky wanted to know what your favorite piece of hardware is.
Well, right now, I'd say it's the Make Noise Shared System and/or the Moog One. I mean, both of them, both made in Asheville, North Carolina. I don't know. I think it's the water there. They create awesome instruments there. I love them both for their unique capabilities, and they're both instruments that I will spend the rest of my life just digging into.
Is it okay to say amen on a synth show? Amen, brother. Preach it.
Were there any other questions there?
Yeah, one more question for you, or at least I don't know if Ben has any more, but what kind of strategies do you have for mixing? So something that, let me back up a little bit. Something that I'm very much interested in is combining different types of music, guitars and synthesizers and software stuff. What is your strategy for going about that when you're mixing, Moog One and Make Noise and other stuff together when you create music?
Yeah, it's again another whole part of this is the whole mixing and then mastering stage so that you can put it out and hopefully have as high quality recording as possible, right? So again, it's the engineering aspect of this. When you've got all the musical ideas recorded, then spending time, the mixing process is another combination of art and engineering, and it's where you just have to develop your ears. Obviously, I also try to keep things very simple. So I use isotope plugins almost exclusively during my mixing and mastering step. I might use a couple of effects. I've got, of course, I used Supermassive a couple of times on this last album. Delay, Supermassive, and then I have Echo Boy for delay. And I think I've used a couple other reverbs. So Arturia Rev Plate 140 and Native Instruments ROM, right? So that's the only plugins I have. So I'm using Neutron as my channel strip from Isotope, and just using the EQ and compressor and exciter there. That's pretty much the core on every track, and then it's Ozone for mastering, along with Ulean loudness meter, which I found incredibly useful, which has a free version and then a pro version for $50. So I try to keep the plugin simple, and the quality of the synth, I want it to shine through. The quality of the sound, I don't want it. Sometimes, obviously, you want to use a reverb, you want to create a space and so on. But if you listen to my recordings, you'll hear there's some sounds like that are leveraging a reverb, and others are fairly dry, and you're just hearing hopefully the quality of the synthesizer shine through. After that, it's just working with the stereo field. Not everything has to be in the center, and obviously, mixing to taste, where things can be very, very quiet, along with things that are sitting further up in the mix, and try to get some depth. I mean, that's what else can you hope for, right? Especially when you've got a number of things going on musically in the arrangement. You have to use those faders, use those EQs, and use the left and right panning to get stuff positioned in the stereo field. And and then use some reverb to taste and delay to taste. That's really it. I don't go overboard too much in the mixing or mastering process. Try not to.
And in the hardware stage of things, like if when it comes to say mixing your polysynths with your Eurorack, where do you start first there? Do you start with the Eurorack? I would guess that you would start with the Eurorack and then you overlay just based on how you said you compose. But is that a standard format for you, or do you kind of go back and forth? Is there some sort of synergy between the two?
I go back and forth. I think the one thing that's consistent is I decide on what the tempo is going to be, and I get that consistent between my DAW and the Squarp pyramid. And so as I'm doing the work in the hardware, I know that the end result of the tempo is synced with whatever's going to end up in the DAW. As long as I arrive at the right tempo, then what I'm doing with the drum machine, anything I'm doing on the modular, anything I'm doing with the subsequent 37 or the Matrix Brood or the Moog 1, it's all, I know that I've got a consistent clock. So even if I'm doing polymeters or polyrhythms, I know that I've got a consistent clock underneath of everything. And then I work outside the DAW first, sometimes with modular first, sometimes with a sequence first on the Moog 1. Those are both standard starting places. And then I go, once I'm happy with what's happening outside the DAW, I do have another investment I made is a 32 channel mixer. So the PreSonus Studio Live, which is also essentially my sound card, right? So it's doing the analog to digital conversion. So I can record every instrument I have, mono and stereo, as separate tracks in the DAW, so that I can get very precise around, as I said, when I use Neutron on a track, it might be just on the sub 37. I want to get that thing sounding just right in the mix. So getting the EQ, getting the pan, all of that. I couldn't do that if I was recording this whole room as just stereo, as an example, or just as a few channels. So I try to get everything on its own track in the DAW, and then do my mixing and mastering, go through the mixing and mastering process.
Excellent. Ben, anything else?
That was actually going to be one of my questions. You've ruined it for me there. One of my other questions was about the drums, but he answered that earlier as well with the MPC. No, I'm very happy with the interview, and it's been a pleasure to meet Bob and to hear about some of his insights into how he puts his music together.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate it, but I'm extremely flattered to have been invited, and you guys have been really kind, so I appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. Pleasure's been all ours, I can tell you that. So great. Thank you, everyone, to everyone that's in the chat room, because it's been a really active chat room. I'm sorry that I've not been able to keep up. We've had lots of comments going. It's kind of one of those things that you just kind of have to let it go, and then you just keep looking through and you find a few bits in there. If you ever want to grab our attention, use the @ function, at ProSynth Network or at Red Electro for Ben or anyone, or at Cryss Synthient for anything there, and then you get our attention. Then we can definitely bring you into the whole thing, which is one of the great things about this thing, where we can have live audience interaction. But Bob,
been watching it. It's been a pretty good chat today.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Bob, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you ever so much for giving us a 2.5, almost 3 hours of your Sunday to us. We're very grateful for your attendance, and if anybody wants to, they can go and buy your album, bobfamiliar.bandcamp.com. Better Living Through Chemistry is the album that is out now, and all of Bob's other material.
A number of other albums too that are very, very good.
Absolutely, you can check them all out there.
Next week, we should make an announcement. We are going to be having Sean Christopher Dockery on.
Yep.
And he's an American synthesist, and you would probably recognize he's part of our ProSynth network, but you would recognize his tracks because he's the guy that's doing a lot of classical songs with really high-end analog synthesizers like the River. He's got some vintage stuff like a Trident and an OB8. And then also doing just some like great stuff from our childhood, like he just did the Airwolf theme. So
yes, I saw that.
Checking out, talking with him and checking out his studio and next weekend.
Cool. There you go. So plenty to look forward to for episode. It'll be episode 12. Blimey, we're rattling through these. Into double figures already. Bob, thank you ever so much again for joining us.
Bobby.
It's been great. Cryss and Ben, as always, fabulous co-hosts. Thanks for all of your input and your time. It's greatly appreciated by myself and hopefully the audience as well, because that's what we're doing it for. We will be back same time, same place next week, unless something terrible happens, and I'll probably talk that up. But we should all be here 8 p.m. UK time, 12 p.m. West Coast. So yeah, you figure out the rest for you, because I'm done with time. I do time zones from Monday to Friday when I'm working. Outside of that, my brain goes to mush. So the best way to make sure you don't miss a show is to like us. So he's doing this. Let me just bring my cam up. Like, and see, I'm doing this one-handed. Like and subscribe. And if you subscribe, then whenever we put up the live show, which is usually 2 or 3 days before we do it, you will get a notification. And make sure you hit that bell button. That's the other thing that these crazy YouTubers tell us to do now.
Smash the bell.
Smash the bell. I'm like Andrew Wang here, aren't I? Damn it. So yeah, like, subscribe, smash the bell, do whatever it is. Put something in your phone or set an alarm. 8 p.m. UK time every Sunday, wherever we possibly can. We haven't missed one yet, I don't think. So, do join us. And if you want to find us on Facebook as well, ProSynth Network, just search for that on Facebook. And if you haven't already joined our community there, then do click the join button. Answer the very simple questions that exist there, just to prove to us that you're human and you're real. Agree to the rules, and you're in. And you're in a really cool club of people sharing lots of information. Bob's there, I'm there, Cryss is there, Ben's there, Hans Zimmer's there. We've got loads of great people there, so it's a really, really good place to be. So come and join us. Thank you ever so much, everyone. Take great care and look after yourselves. Stay safe and stay healthy, and we will see you all next week. Bye-bye.